James Eck. I dungeon master frequently, and I mostly do theater of the mind and not so much minifigs. So that's the end of the spectrum that I live on. And so kind of the spectrum from high quality painted pewter minifigs to total theater of the mind. I'm mostly theater of the mind, X's on whiteboards, cut out pieces of paper with the binder clips on them to make them stand up, and a few 3D printed things, and that's about as high as I get on that continuum. But I'm happy to talk about what people have to say and what minifigs add to the game.
Yeah, fantastic. Or don't, right? Or don't. Tom, you want to introduce yourself?
My name's Tom Lauer. I dungeon master. Well, I am currently not dungeon mastering anything. I'm playing in a game right now, but I'm working on I'm working on prepping a Warcraft 3 Third War campaign. That's actually what this guy's for. But I'm closer to the other end of that spectrum. I'm not quite, full 3D, full painted pewter models and whatnot. I don't have the money for Warhammer or anything like that. And so I do mostly DIY minis. So, and in terms of theater of the mind, I have some background in acting and set design and how to use a little bit of set dressing to tell a lot of a story.
That's interesting. You're not talking about miniatures. You mean like hanging a tapestry up in your gaming room or something?
No, it would be, for example, X's on a whiteboard or something. You've got the tree here, the fallen log here. Just a couple of very important things that knows right where they're at. Like, because I run a very tactical game, where you're at is very important.
And later in the chat, can I see the chat? If I can see the chat, I will drop into the chat a URL where you can enter a contest to win 5 signed books. I am a game master. I did it a lot in high school. Then I had about a 30-year break. Maybe not quite 30, maybe 25. And I played with some of the same guys I played with, actually, and also with new friends and my kids. And whether I use painted miniatures sort of depends on the game. And so the answer is sometimes, yeah, a lot. When I'm playing in particular in playing RuneQuest in the world of Glorantha, it's got a lot of minis for that. But we're starting a top secret campaign on Saturday, and I'm not going to use minis at all. I'll use little chits on the Mondo mat to move them around so I can sketch out downtown Barcelona and stuff. Okay, so we can start a conversation, but let's see, first of all, have we got, producer, do we have a sense of what people actually want us to talk about?
I've got the chat pulled up here, and I don't see any questions in there yet. Maybe they've been...
Are there people? By the way, I can't tell. Can you tell?
There's no way to tell who's in a channel. So
maybe it's us.
If we went to the YouTube stream, we could tell if there were people on it. But speaking of chits, you said you were going to use chits, and that is a way that I've never experimented with, little coin miniatures. That has a lot of value tactically because it makes it easy to see things, and you see that a lot when you're running these games virtually online in Roll20 and things. And so going virtual has really upped my miniature game. As far as
you're talking about like Roll20 or something?
Yeah, Roll20, Fantasy Grounds, I think is the other big one.
Yeah. Or you have virtual chits. You can Roll20's got a feature where you can take any graphic image and stamp out a little a ringed scalable token.
Yep. So you can have it look top down. You can have it have their face on there. You can do all kinds of things with it. We do have a question.
Nifty.
We do have a question about what is theater of the mind. And so,
well, you want to take that since you started
I'll go right ahead there. So theater of the mind is when everyone imagines where everything is, and everything's a little more loosey-goosey because you don't have the map there to take your measurements. So usually as Dungeon Master when I'm doing theater of the mind, I'll have noted on my whiteboard next to me how far away people are from a given thing that's pivotal to the battle, right? So if there's two groups charging towards each other, I'll be tracking how far away they still are from each other so that we can know the archers' ranges and things like that. But their exact positions aren't as necessary. And so I can track it in a single dimensional kind of a measurement rather than needing to know the 2-dimensional or even 3-dimensional layout of the battlefield. And often those measurements don't matter at all because you've just charged into a room and you know that everyone's close enough to hit each other in that room.
I thought this was all there was when I started playing at like the age of 12, right? I like minis. It was years before I realized some people had lots of miniatures. So what are advantages and disadvantages to playing that way? What do you think?
In my mind, it moves a lot quicker. There's not so much of the moving things around and making sure you're in the right tactical position. Disadvantage, you don't have that tactical aspect. And I like the tactical aspect, which is why I'll sometimes have the map with the X's on it to at least bring that in. But on the flip side, it does let things move really quickly sometimes.
Sometimes a player might go, oh, there are trees there. I am going to do X with those trees, where if she was just running forward and you said, hey, you're 70 feet away, you're now in medium range, it might not have occurred to her to do the same thing.
That's true. They do need to ask more questions, like, are there trees nearby and at what distance and things like that? Because they're not right there in front of them.
Yeah. Interesting. Do you find that the questions your players ask change depending on whether you put stuff down? Do they ask more questions when you're not showing them the tactical scene?
Yeah, they definitely do. And one of the things that I like about being theater of the mind and not having a tactical scene already drawn out is if they ask a question, the answer can be yes more often, right? If they ask, is there a chandelier with a rope that I can cut nearby? Well, it wasn't in my mind until they asked, but now there is. Or is there a log that I can lay down behind? And yeah, okay, sure, there's a log. Why wouldn't there be? We're in a forest.
Yeah.
And it makes it a lot easier for them to imagine new things to add to the scene that I didn't preconceive.
Lets you yes and the concepts.
Yeah.
Which is an improv term. I apologize.
Oh, my son's
it's a good term.
Yeah. So you're changing the nature of the storytelling towards a more collective experience if you're not committed to what the plastic scene looks like. I think that's pretty interesting. So Tom, tell me, you said you tend to be more towards the other end. When are circumstances when you would favor playing a more pure theater of the mind without a physical representation of the tactical scene?
Hang on, you're breaking up pretty bad. Hang on.
Oops, sorry. James, can you hear me okay? Is it my end, you think, or Tom?
I can hear you. Your audio delays a little bit when you first come in, but I haven't had a major problem.
my internet was my internet's funky, so I had to reboot something. So what was your question?
It could be my internet too. I have 4 teenagers trying to do their homework right now on the internet. So my question was, when would you? So you said you tend to favor using more miniatures. What are circumstances where you would favor theater of the mind more?
Actually, I've actually got a really good example of that. We had in a previous run through of my third war campaign, there was a bridge along a cliffside that I just added it because it was nice, and this cliffside road collapses while they're walking on it. And you don't need to have that built out as a diorama or anything, because the players are going to imagine it much more vividly than I could ever build it, unless I was like, one of those obscenely talented guys that make the model railroad dioramas.
Sure.
But we do have a couple more questions when you guys are ready.
Oh, great. Are you logged in both as a participant and as a panelist? Is that what you're looking at, James? What are you seeing that I'm not?
So I'm in the participant chat here. On the other.
He's in the other server.
in Discord twice, you cheater. Okay, I'm going to go do that. But go ahead and read us the next question.
Sure. So Renee asked, what is the biggest challenge in the playing with minifigs at the moment? And in my mind, it's a lot easier now with Roll20, and everyone the expectation to be on Roll20 means that you got free minifigs of very high quality if you want. So I can't think of any challenges at the moment. Does anyone have a different answer?
Yes, I do. One of the biggest challenges with minifigures, especially if you're actually wanting concrete, or physical minis, don't make them out of concrete. If you're wanting physical minis, they can get really, really expensive really, really quickly because you need the mini, you need the paint, you need the glue, you need the flocking if you really want to go all in. And I don't have the money for that. So I
don't have the time for that.
Yeah, I don't have the attention span for that. I've got severe ADHD. I cannot spend the time it takes to paint one elf at a time. So what I did was I made my minis. These are Shrinky Dink minis. I printed out some concept art from Warcraft 3 and just traced it onto with Shrinky Dink, you need to have it like 3 times the size that you want it to end up at. So I printed it out 3 times this size, traced it on, and then did what you do with Shrinky Dink, just stick it in the oven. And then I discovered this. This is a coin mini. It's just a washer with an epoxy sticker. I love these. I've got an entire bag of them. I can make 100 of these in less than an hour, and it costs me $5.
I love that. I haven't used coin minis, but I've wanted to recently.
And the best part is, these guys are like the art on this. That's the token I was using on Roll20. I can put that into a Word document, print off an entire sheet of them, and then just sit there and listen to a podcast or something.
Awesome.
That's interesting. Yeah, so it can cost a lot of money, which is why I did not have a very large minis collection when I was younger. And it's actually sitting and painting and doing the minis work is a hobby all in of itself. So frankly, depending on where you are and do I have more money or more time spectrum, it's going to cost you, unless you're paying someone to do the work, it's going to cost you a lot of money. In some senses, though, we live in a kind of golden age because things like Kickstarter have enabled some real niche minis to be produced. I mean, if you're looking for sort of D&D stuff, you can go get Nolzur's Keep or whatever those plastic, elves and hobbits and stuff in any brick and mortar game store or Amazon. But I actually, so for example, one of the worlds I've played in a lot as a teenager and playing in now is a world called Glorantha, which is not a D&D world, and it doesn't have D&D creatures in it. It has, for example, humanoid ducks rather than hobbits, and its trolls ride large beetles. And the magic of Kickstarter, so you can see like the flocking on the base and stuff there. The magic of Kickstarter means that people can go out there and produce small batch, really specialized minis. Because the truth is, they're never going to sell a million Glorantha troll beetle cavalry. It's just not going to happen. But if you go out there and put out the proposal, people can pre-purchase how many they want to buy, and you can sell them. So if you are interested in painting miniatures, time and money, I think the big downside. I think there's some upside though. It's just hella fun to put some flashy, I put this guy Zathros of Halikev and like his train of beetle riding troll warriors on the table, and the party was for like 5 minutes. Or if I tend to keep a box behind me in the gaming room. Sometimes it's empty, but sometimes it has like the new thing that I bought and painted that my players have no idea what it is yet. So they'll spend 10 minutes every time speculating. What is it this time? Tentacle-headed giant or whatever. which is just a different dimension. It's just different dimension to the gaming. I think is the fun of it for me. And I like the painting. It's time consuming, but it's like a Zen thing. You spend time making something small. You're taking somebody else's work of art and you're creating your own work of art on it to then share with people. So, yeah. Having said that, I don't use minis every scene, and I don't use them every game. When there's spectacle that I really want to show people, or I really want to be clear about the tactics, then I'll use some kind of physical representation. Other questions. What else have we got there, James?
I was thinking it would be a good transition into this question. You were talking about Kickstarter as a place where you could pick things like this up, and they were asking, what is the best resource for people who want to dive in deeper?
To painting, to actually painting.
Oh, I don't think that it was clarified to that extent. I think we can be pretty general. I've been very happy with a 3D printer, and Fat Dragon Games does very easily 3D printed minis that are high quality. So that's the only recommendation I have as far as a resource to dive in deeper. But you'd have to be willing to invest in a 3D printer and then paint them all. So I just have unpainted 3D printed minis at my table.
Unpainted minis are a common. This is why Hero Forge, right? They recently they switched to a printer where they can print it in color.
And I still don't
know what they cost.
I still don't know how that science works. Got to look it up.
Neither do I, but I love it. I love tinkering with Hero Forge.
It's like $20 a pop unpainted. So I don't know what they're charging for them colored, but my guess is it's not cheap.
Yeah, and if you've got your own printer, you can buy the STL for $7.99 or $9.99 now. One of them.
Oh.
But yeah,
that's an interesting resource.
Yeah, Hero Forge is good.
Yeah, and there are other ones that I haven't used very much. So in this same setting, my daughter wanted to play. She had a female character who worshipped Lancor Mai, the god of knowledge. Lancor Mai's priests all have beards. She needed a bearded woman. Okay, and moreover, with kind of a vaguely like a wizard look. Bearded woman, kind of wizard look, kind of Bronze Age with a spear. You can imagine, no one makes that mini, except Hero Forge. You can go do it, right? You just go, you woman. I was like, I don't know if it's going to let us put a beard on this character, but sure enough, it did.
Nice.
And sandals and a spear. So that's if you need your mini, your hero, and it's not a game like Call of Cthulhu where you're likely to just die every session anyway. You know that. And I think there are other sites that do it, but Hero Forge lets you modulate a character on the screen and then buy it, and it ships to you in the material you choose.
With the pose you want.
The pose you want.
Yeah.
And like little peripherals, right? You can be like, put on a belt pouch. No, not that style of belt pouch. It's pretty cool.
It's dope.
What you're holding in your hands, to the whole 9 yards. I want to jump back because I skipped some questions, but we had a question that was, what software do you use to design your models for the 3D printer?
That's good.
And I use Blender, and I do a terrible job. But Thingiverse, lots of people design really good models and put them on Thingiverse. You won't necessarily be able to find the cobbled rogue that you're looking for, but you can find something close maybe. It's a little rough when you're looking for something specific, but there are a lot of good ones for things that are common.
Let me make a quick comment on modeling, on painting and stuff. So my experience is there are a few things that you really want to buy really in a game store. Okay. Like little tufts of gamer grass that you can put on, like you can buy them on Amazon or something, but I'm saying don't go to a craft store. Okay. Little tufts of grass, like the really finest, like the Army line has their insane detail or psycho size of brush, right? Like you're just not going to find those at Michael's or Hobby Lobby. But a lot of the stuff that you're just getting overcharged for. I buy all of my paints at Walmart.
You do?
Yeah, they're like 50 cents a bottle or $1 for the nice one. Or if I want a funky color, I'll go like Michael's. You can make your own washes.
That makes me feel really good because I bought my paint at Joann's, and everyone tells me that it's why my models suck, but it's probably just because I suck.
They're just jealous that you saved money at Joann's. They're lying when they say that you suck. It's just not even true. Yeah, brushes and grass. I mean, even like flocking you can get at Hobby Lobby, like big bags of like static, it's chopped up rubber, stained green is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
But I think most things you can get it. Just don't let the game store rip you off. Knowledge, I don't know. I used to read like White Dwarf magazine. Used to have painting tips when I started doing this a little bit back in like 1989. I think you can just find a lot of advice online. Frankly, I think I would just spend some time searching and trying stuff. You're never going to know what works for you until you try it.
There's a lot of really good painters on YouTube. Squidmar, Jazza has done a few minifig paints. Yeah.
And on the subject of just try it, what I did when I first wanted to start out is I bought a box of like little soldiers that weren't minifig size, right? That were super cheap, so that I could just try painting them and get a feel for how it went before I started painting something that I paid a little bit more for.
That is really wise. Yeah, don't paint your beloved hero miniature first.
Yep. Do we want to go to another question?
I think so.
Yeah.
Okay. Robin Swift asked, how has tabletop RPG gaming changed in the past 5 years? And what do you predict will happen in the next 5 to 10 years? I have a lot to say. I don't know if it fits in this panel super well. But I think a lot of it's moved online. I think it's become a lot more narrative based, and that trend will probably continue, and that there will be a counter trend to it, but that the narrative trend will probably continue. And that means that minifigs will become less important in a tactical standpoint, but also very important for setting that scenery. One of you used a great word for it, the spectacle of the sessions. That narrative that supports that narrative will cause minifigs to come more into it, while at the same time they kind of move out because the tactics are taking a backseat. Of course, there's always a counterculture where the tactics are going to be even more emphasized, right?
Someone doubles down. It's interesting. There was a period when it seemed like the whole tabletop role-playing scene wanted to move away from theater of their mind. And I've never been a big D&D player, so I'm probably got the numbering wrong. But I want to say around like D&D 4, is that right? Where everything it wasn't feet, it was like grid inches. You move forward 3 spaces, which is sort of like locked you into that tactical space. Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay did an edition too, which I got to play with my kids and it sucked. No, that's not why it sucked. It sucked because it was one of those damn systems with like funky dice. So you're like, roll 3 hammers, a comet, and a skull. What does that mean? And you got to go interpret it. So it's just annoying. But it feels like we kind of went one way, and then D&D 5.0 kind of said, okay, that's there, but we could talk about feet again. So I mean, my guess is pendulums like these will kind of swing back and forth. I think the online stuff is really new. I mean, there's been like Bard's Tale and whatever but it's just the ability to talk real time, see each other, load images into your interface, move things around on a map. That's pretty cool. Having said that, my gaming group is very sick of it after the last year. So I think they're looking forward to some sessions with no Discord for a while.
I should add the other new technology that's driving the narrative shift is podcasts. That so many people are making actual play podcasts now, and those are very narrative heavy, just because of the medium. And so that's what's drawing a lot of people into the game, and they're expecting that from their games.
That's interesting. So it's not the way they play the games; it's their models.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
In other words, who they're following, not models in the sense, of miniatures.
Right.
Gotcha. Sorry, I was a little confused.
It's interesting. I was in Italy for a while, 20 odd years ago, and I met a banjo player. He said, "You Americans have it. You Americans who like bluegrass music have it easy because you got an Uncle Bob who sucks at the banjo. So you hear that and you're like, it's okay to suck at the banjo. All of my models are perfect." So I feel bad about myself all the time. So maybe we're going to have a generation of depressed gamers, I guess is my word.
Yeah, well, unless we educate against the expecting, production quality games at your table.
I feel like
there's a word for that now. They call it the Matthew Mercer effect.
Oh yeah, yep. He's a big.
So I feel like I can. This is a banner I can march under. That it should be okay to suck. I feel like I can fight that fight.
it seriously makes me want to put out a really, really, really low production value RPG podcast just to let people know. No, this is what it's really like. We just chat the whole time.
And it's okay.
Yep. Sorry, Tom, did you have something to say about that? We are a little bit off the beaten path here.
Not really. The only thing that I could have latched onto would have taken us down a tangent, and we probably want to avoid that here. So I think we can jump to the next question.
Okay, so we got two more so far.
All right, let's hear it.
Keep them coming. So what is one piece of practical advice you would give to someone starting out with miniatures? And so I think we've covered that to some extent, to just get started and try, preferably on something cheap.
Yeah.
There are probably sets you can buy where it's all plastic and don't cost as much as army building sets. Here's a whole troop of goblins. Here's a whole troop of dwarves or something. I haven't been in the market for those for a long time, but yeah, and forgive yourself for mistakes. People aren't going to look at something you paint with the same critical eye that you do and go, "Oh, you got a little bit of silver on the underside of that leather-colored pouch, didn't you, Dave?" They'll go, "Oh, cool, it's a dwarf."
Yeah, you notice a lot more at painting range than you notice at table range.
Actually, I think so. That's a really interesting point. So here's something that I did not really appreciate when I was younger, that I only realized in the last few years when I started painting again. So when you go to paint a mini, whether you mean to or not, you are choosing a distance from which it is optimal to see the mini. Okay, so these guys who are painting for contests, where they're like, paint eyeball, and it's green, it's a green iris, and let me put some lashes on, right? Like, that's for contests. Unless your eyes are amazing, if that mini is 3 feet away from your table, you can't see the eyeball, right? So, that's cool if you want to paint that way. I actually don't. I deliberately, because I put the minis out on the table for everyone to see from 3 to 6 feet away, I deliberately paint with a really strong shading that's almost like a graphic novel style. It's probably faster. It's less of a pain in the butt, but that's actually not the point. That's how I want to enjoy the miniature, is from halfway across the table. So that's how I paint it. Visual range matters, I guess, is what I'm saying.
And something you said there reminded me of Tom's Shrink-a-Dink minis. And I love that because you can draw it real big without having to get in real close, and then shrink it down, and it looks great. I couldn't get a good look at it, but it looked like it looked great. Don't
you have to, Tom? Tell us more about that. What's the medium there? what's the medium? Do you like buy
Sharpies?
What?
Sharpie markers.
You drawing on a sheet of? I remember Frinky Dinks being like a little plastic thing.
Yeah, you draw on it. You use these to draw on a sheet of plastic. These guys stick. There was another set of markers I bought that didn't. So Bic does, Sharpie does. I noticed that the metallic ones give you a much more vibrant color. Like they don't go see through. You can see the like. It's a lot easier to see it on the table.
Was that a horse that you drew front and back?
This is I can't draw unless it's a map.
I just couldn't tell if it was only visible from behind or if it had a front side and a back side.
Oh no, it's got a front side and a back side. This is the Warcraft 2 night.
Okay.
Oh, for heck's sake, please focus.
That's going to be hard to get it to focus.
Oh, well.
But so I love that idea from a standpoint of being able to do it cheap and fast and have that high level of detail without actually having to be able to draw that high level of detail.
Yeah, when it shrinks down, it keeps a baffling amount of detail, honestly.
Yeah.
So, what plastic are you drawing on?
Oh shoot, I don't actually know what kind of plastic it is. I had to go and buy a sheet, a pack of Shrinky Dink sheets from Michael's.
No, that's the right answer.
It's like $10 for 10 or 12 sheets.
Fire. Okay, so there's a Shrinky Dink pack.
There are. I know. I've seen. It was Dodger on YouTube. She found a plastic that shrinks. It's the same stuff, but it was like in a salad container thing that you get from a restaurant. But I think they've started moving away from that particular plastic. I'm not sure why. My wife says it's because people realized that, oh, you can shrink this stuff. Let's use a different plastic so that the Shrinky-Dink people aren't losing so much money. I don't know. My wife's a bit more cynical than I am.
Keep it simple. Pick up that Shrinky-Dink pack at Michael's or wherever. I'm gonna have to try that.
Yeah,
I like that a lot.
How much is
it's nice.
What does it tell you?
It shrinks down to a third of its size. So you gotta. Let me see if I can actually.
You're drawing like a night like
be able to
this,
find the.
And it's coming down to a little.
Yeah,
yep.
I might actually have the original.
My kids can do their own minis on that, right? I mean, I love that.
Yeah, they can. Let's see.
Because so far my approach to having people do their own minis and things has been to have them draw it on paper, cut it out, and put those binder clips on there, right? And so as a practical advice for people starting out, I think that's a great way to find out if you like minis in your game, right? If you've been playing Theater of the Mind and you want to experiment with minis, I wholly recommend coins or cutting out pieces of paper and putting binder clips on them just to see if you like what minis look like at your table, and then maybe invest in the higher quality stuff. But the Shrinky-Dink thing is a game changer.
Yeah, I like that. I'm an idiot, I think. I paint the minis for my players. All of them paint their own, but mostly no. They say Dave, and I do it. It's just the other hobby.
Some people really like painting. Some people are, some people are like me, and we can't, and our brain doesn't let us do that.
And that's good advice. Is start by buying one or two to find out if you like painting, right? Because I like it, but I don't like it enough to paint a whole lot of things.
Yeah.
So here's one advantage, though, of me painting for my players. One day, a unsolicited, I didn't know this was coming. Hero Forge mini showed up, which is it's a mini of me. So he's holding a mug and a book, and he's got like a lute on his back and a hat, and I actually have a badger cap. He's like standing next to a badger familiar. And it turned out it was my my nephew Soren who plays in this game, went on Hero Forge, designed a mini, and so he and my brother Matt shipped it to me. So I can exist in my game world because of the goodwill I incurred painting my players' characters.
The avatar of the gods.
Yes, he shows up, strange master of fate. Whoa, you're dead. You're rich. No.
There's one more question in here that I want to get to, because it goes back less of the making minis side of things, and it's more back onto the using them.
Absolutely, we got plenty of time.
Yeah. When it comes to RP heavy campaigns or sessions, how do you judge when a visual aid like a minifig would add to immersion or be too distracting? That is obviously it's a case by case basis. But if there's something, actually, Black Magic Craft has a good example of that. He's got if there's some big set piece inside of this scene that you're describing, if you've got a mini that could represent that, then that can get people to buy into it. Like he used the example of a rundown fountain with a bronze statue on it that would later come to life. But if there's some big intricate set piece, so like my example of the bridge, I don't need a big minifig of a bridge because everyone knows what a bridge looks like, but not everyone is going to be able to imagine this very specific thing that you're describing.
Yeah, I think if the minifig can be exactly what you're describing, it can save you a lot of words. But so I don't have wolves, right? So when my players fight wolves and I need a minifig, there's rats on the table because I have rats, right? And so so that's a little more distracting, right? So I use it when we care about combat, but if we're in a narrative role-playing heavy session and they meet wolves, I'm not going to bust the minis out because it's distracting. It breaks the immersion to throw some rats on the table and say, these are wolves, trust me.
Yeah.
Okay, technical question. Hold on. So are you guys you haven't opened a second copy of Discord. You just clicked on the other server, and so you're being recorded still here. I don't want to do that and then accidentally cut off my recording.
Oh,
yeah. We clicked over and we've got you in a little window up on the side here.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna try this experiment here.
Be brave.
Brave. So what other questions have we got?
I think we've exhausted the questions, unfortunately, but I think it's worth expounding. If you have anything to say, Dave, on the making the decision whether to bring out the minifig or not during an RP situation, I think often the answer is no. But if it can save you a lot of words, so you're not scenery describing to your players a lot, it may be worth it there.
Yeah, so to me, I'm not sure that distracting is the trade-off. I think the trade-offs are around time. No, and so even if you have the minis, if your characters are in a scene that's just not that big, you don't expect it. Like the tension is not that high. You don't feel like people need to know exactly where where on the bridge, right, or in the scene they are. It's probably not worth getting all the stuff out. I mean, at an extreme end, there was sort of the climax to the second year of this. I called it on social media the deliberately epic campaign. We played RuneQuest, and my habit as a game master in my teenage years was kind of to say no to my character, my players, kind of keep them tamped down. And as this campaign, I'm not going to do that. You're in an epic setting, you're just going to ramp up and become epic. And the climax at the end of the second year involved sort of entry into the god realm and the reenactment of one of the great rituals and myths of their people. to gain great magical power, and I set the whole thing up. And so on this basically 6 by 10 feet of table and the big Chessex Mondo mat, we had mountain walls and giants, and some of it was relatively approximate. I didn't have like the mountain range, but I had like castle walls, and they formed a gate and put a giant there to represent the giant guardian, and or like when you have a battle, and it just adds dimension. But the trade-off for me isn't this. I'm rambling, but the trade-off is not distraction. The trade-off is time to set up, time to clean up.
Distraction during your preparation.
Yeah, distraction. Fair enough. Maybe that's the sense in which distraction makes the most sense. Yeah.
But I know that it would also be distracting to my players if I put a bunch of minis out, like say they're having a meeting in a tavern with the captain of the guard to get some information, and I put all the minis out. They're suddenly wanting to make perception checks and insight checks. Are we being attacked? Why are there minis on this table?
Yeah. Matt Colville actually talks about that. He, as soon as you break out the minis, people start thinking, "Oh, hey, do we need to like is this a combat encounter? What do we need to be aware of? What is he trying to set us up for?" He wouldn't break the minis out unless we were going to fight.
And you could break that if you broke out the minis every time that you met a guy in a tavern. But
even just some.
Yeah.
You used it often.
Yep. But it would take an effort. I think for the most part, they're going to expect combat if they see minis. And that may distract from the role play.
Yeah, that's my experience. I guess I don't mind it so much, because often you do the same thing if you do something like you say, "Oh, okay, you're traveling through the forest. What's your marching order?"
Yeah. Oh, you could do it on purpose. That's true. Just pull out the minis to make them think that there's an enemy here, just to make the role play more interesting. That could be the case.
Make them slow down and search everything. I don't understand. Where's the ambush? Creep over to that log.
And that raises something that I heard, and I haven't decided how I feel about this. In a discussion about puzzles, was that they'd used the scenery that they'd set up was indicated which lever they should pull, because it was the lever that was more used and less rusted than the other ones in the terrain. And I said, on the one hand, some players will love that, right? Some players will love that they noticed in the terrain that there was this thing and that you made the effort to make the puzzle part of the terrain. Other players are going to say, no, it's not my job to notice things like that. It's my character's job to notice things like that. I should have been able to get that with a perception check. And so I go back and forth on the quality of using miniatures in that way.
That's interesting. So I'll sometimes have players ask, does it look just like this? Is this really what it looks like? And I think that's where their heads are. Is there a little hole there? Do I stick my hand in that hole?
Because the answer is probably no. And so when the answer is yes, you've now subverted that expectation, and it doesn't feel right to me. But at the same time, it's that cool. It is a cool moment when it is that way, and I go back and forth.
Yeah. It maybe a cool moment to set up rarely, so there's no expectation that every single session you're going to buy and paint a special door or 3 different rusty pages or whatever.
Yeah.
The way it worked. I'm looking at the chat.
It worked.
Huzzah!
Yeah. Well, thanks everybody for the questions. Tom, it sounds like you have something to say.
I wasn't able to find the sheet that I pulled this guy from, but I found another one. So this is how big they start out, and that's how big they end at.
Oh, that is so cool.
Yeah.
I didn't even realize you can just trace them, because you can put that behind the thing, and that's amazing.
That's interesting. So you can create characters. You can create rinky-dink character models of illustrated characters in the book.
Yeah. Or if you find like a coloring book page or something like that, you can.
You like?
Yeah, like let's say your kid wants to play. They want you're playing a DC thing and your kid wants to play Batman, pull open a Justice League thing, have them trace it for you, and then they can color it in themselves and stuff like that, and then you stick it in the oven and it shrinks down. Put some parchment paper on top of them, otherwise you can get some warping. Parchment paper is apparently just heavy enough to keep them from doing that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Parchment paper, huh?
Apparently.
I could use that at work because our PCBs that we build warp when we put them in the temperature chamber.
I have it's one of those I've read it online. I have not actually been able to use it yet.
That's what I paint on. Fold it over parchment paper.
Yeah.
Used tinfoil at first, but then I realized it was making me blind because it was reflecting spots of light into my eyes.
Yeah.
Nice.
That's effective.
Alrighty, right. Is there anything else?
Well, I think they're going to ask us to wind up soon, right? Maybe we ought to talk about what else you guys are going to be available for over the course of the symposium and where else people can find you. How about that?
Yeah, sure. I've got Dungeon Crawler Nostalgia at 8, and then I'm in Tips and Tricks for Dungeon Masters at 12 tomorrow, and Choose Your Audience, games for different age groups at 3 tomorrow, Gaming Remotely at 12 on Saturday, How System Affects Table Dynamics. I'm excited for that one. At 5 on Saturday, and Intro to Tabletop RPGs at 7 on Saturday. Feels like that one should have been first. Introduce everybody and then get into all these details.
You are really in the gaming track. Wow.
Yeah. This was my only panel. So yeah.
You'll be hanging out in the
where I am. Oh yeah, I'll absolutely be in the attendee server. I guess if people wanted to look me up online, Google Night of Lotus world map, go into the image tab. I'm the third result. I'm an amateur cartographer as well, so I take commissions and stuff like that. So I could make you a world map if you wanted.
Nice.
Not city maps. I'm awful at those. Still working. But,
and I guess you can find me at Mindweave RPG, or if you put in Rotating Labyrinths, that'll probably find me.
Night of Lotus with a K or with no K?
With a K, and it's LODIS.
Oh, okay, very good.
Yeah.
I would have got that right.
Glad we clarified that.
Yeah.
Thank you all very much.